The dust rose into the air as the massive excavator cut through the hard soil of the old estate. It was just another day for the construction workers until a dry, metallic sound echoed across the site, halting the hum of the machines. A dense silence fell, heavy with foreboding. As they approached the point of impact, they saw something that made their blood run cold: fragments of human bones, still partially buried in the cold earth. The foreman, his face pale, could barely form words as he called the authorities. When archaeologist Helena Campos arrived at the scene, she felt the weight of the discovery hanging in the air. There was something disturbing about the site, something that whispered long-buried secrets. The bones were brittle, but the way they were arranged suggested that this was no ordinary burial. With each excavation, Helena realized she was about to uncover a story the town preferred to forget. Helena was not a woman easily intimidated. After years of dealing with relics from the past, she had learned that answers always lay in the soil, waiting to be discovered. However, as she delved into the town's old records, she stumbled upon an even deeper mystery. A young woman named Beatrice Alencar, heiress to one of the town's most influential families, had disappeared without a trace decades ago. The last time she was seen, Beatrice had been on the very property where the bones had now been found. The connection was obvious, but the truth was far from simple. The records of Beatrice's disappearance were vague, almost as if someone had tried to erase her existence from the files. Helena shuddered as she realized that the pieces of this puzzle were far more intertwined than she had imagined. Determined to get to the bottom of it, she began investigating the Alencar family history, diving into old archives and interviewing the few who still remembered that tragic episode. As she dug deeper, both in the ground and in the past, Helena began to realize that there was something very wrong with the narrative the town told about itself. The Alencar family, once revered, seemed shrouded in a cloud of secrets and intrigues that spanned generations. The matriarch, Dona Odette Alencar, was an imposing figure, known for her severity and tight control over the family's affairs. However, the stories Helena heard whispered in the dusty corridors of old libraries painted a very different picture, one of cruelty, manipulation, and possibly a covered-up murder. Helena knew she was getting close to something dangerous. Every new discovery raised more questions than answers, and she began to feel watched, as if someone or something wanted to stop her from going any further. Yet there was something that pushed her to continue, a voice from the past that echoed in her mind, begging for justice, pleading to be heard. And then, while searching an old abandoned mansion that had once belonged to the Alencars, Helena found what seemed to be a diary. Its pages, yellowed with age, told the story of a young woman who had fallen in love with someone the family would never accept. A young woman who feared for her life, who described in detail the torments she endured, and who knew that her existence was about to be erased. The last words were a silent scream, a cry for help that never came in time. The clues were beginning to fit together, but what Helena didn't know was that she was about to step into a much more dangerous game than she had imagined. With each page turned, the echoes of the past grew stronger, pulling her into a whirlwind of secrets that could not only change the town's history but also put her own life at risk. The sound of footsteps echoed through the empty mansion, and Helena froze. She was not alone. Helena held her breath, her senses on high alert. The diary, still open in her hands, seemed to pulse like a racing heart, its words heavy with fear and despair. The darkness around her thickened, and the footsteps echoing through the old corridors drew closer, each step resonating like a sinister warning. Trying to control the panic threatening to take over, Helena quickly closed the diary and tucked it into her bag. Her eyes scanned the room for an escape route. The mansion, with its furniture covered in white sheets and faded walls, had an air of abandonment, but also a strange feeling that time had stood still there. It was as if the spirits of the past still haunted the place, bound to secrets that should never be revealed. The footsteps stopped, and a deathly silence filled the room. Helena felt a chill run down her spine. Whoever was there knew she was too. Determined to leave unnoticed, she headed silently toward the back door, trying to make as little noise as possible. Each step was torture, the creaking floorboards beneath her feet seeming louder than ever. When she finally reached the door, her trembling hand grasped the rusty doorknob. Before she could turn it, a cold, familiar voice paralyzed her. "Did you think you could meddle where you shouldn't without consequences, Miss Campos?" Helena slowly turned, her heart pounding. In the dim light, a tall, slender figure emerged from the shadows. The piercing eyes of Dona Odette Alencar glowed with restrained fury, her imposing stance conveying a veiled threat. Beside her, a burly man, likely a security guard, blocked the exit. "Curiosity, my dear, is a dangerous weapon," Dona Odette continued, approaching with measured steps. "There are things that should remain buried, both in the ground and in people's memories. It's a shame you got yourself involved in this." Helena knew she was in danger. Dona Odette's reputation wasn't just that of an influential woman, but of someone who used any means necessary to protect her family's interests. And now, with the diary in her possession, Helena had proof that Beatrice's disappearance wasn't just a case of a rebellious young woman running away from home. There was more, much more, and Dona Odette was willing to do anything to ensure those secrets never came to light. But Helena wasn't the type to be easily intimidated. With a steady gaze, she replied, "The truth always finds a way to come to light, Dona Odette. No matter how much you try to bury it." The Alencar matriarch let out a dry laugh. "We'll see if you remain so brave when you find out what really happened to Beatrice. She resisted, just as you're resisting now. But everyone has a limit, Miss Campos. Everyone." The man beside Dona Odette stepped forward, and Helena knew she had to act fast. With a quick motion, she opened the back door and ran, the sound of heavy footsteps behind her growing more urgent with every second. She knew that if she were captured, the truth about Beatrice and the Alencar secrets would be buried forever, along with her. Running through the deserted streets, Helena felt adrenaline coursing through her veins. She needed to find a safe place. She needed time to understand the information contained in that diary. More importantly, she needed a plan to expose the Alencars before they silenced her for good. She had barely escaped the mansion when a new idea struck her. What if Beatrice had left more clues, hidden in places that only someone very determined could find? Maybe the diary was just the beginning, a key to an even bigger secret buried deep within the town. The thought gave Helena new strength. She knew she was stirring up a hornet's nest, but now she was more determined than ever. The echoes of the past still resounded, and she knew she couldn't rest until all the truths were revealed. She just needed to survive long enough to do it. Helena ran through the town streets as if her life depended on it, and it did. Her heart pounded wildly, not just from the physical exertion, but from the realization that, with the diary in her hands, she was carrying a deadly secret. The words written on those yellowed pages were a silent accusation, undeniable proof that Beatrice Alencar had been the victim of something far more sinister than a simple runaway. And now, Helena knew too much. The footsteps of her pursuers echoed through the narrow streets, growing closer. She knew she couldn't go home, nor to any place they could predict. She needed a safe place where she could hide and plan her next move. Beatrice's diary was an important piece, but there was more, something she hadn't yet discovered. Ducking into a dimly lit alley, Helena saw a faint light in the distance. It was the small house of a trusted friend, Mariana, a local journalist known for her courage in exposing the town's corruption. Mariana always said, "The truth is like water. No matter how hard you try to block it, it always finds a way." Helena knew that if there was anyone who could help her reveal what she had discovered, it was Mariana. She knocked on the door quickly, glancing over her shoulder as fear tightened in her chest. After what felt like hours, the door creaked open, revealing Mariana's tired but alert face. Wasting no time, Helena stepped inside, closing the door behind her. "Helena, what's going on? You look pale," Mariana exclaimed, guiding her into the small living room. "Who is following you?" "I don't have much time to explain," Helena replied, trying to catch her breath. "I found this while investigating Beatrice's case." She pulled the diary from her bag and handed it to Mariana. "I need you to read it. There are secrets in there that could bring down the Alencars." Mariana took the diary, her expression a mix of shock and curiosity. "So, it's true? There have always been rumors that her disappearance wasn't what it seemed, but no one ever managed to prove anything." Helena nodded as she looked out the window, trying to see if she had been followed. "It's not just the disappearance. It's a conspiracy that involves the entire town, secrets they buried decades ago. And now, they know I've uncovered them." Mariana quickly flipped through the pages, her eyes widening with each new revelation. This is explosive, Helena. If it gets published, it would destroy the Alencar's reputation. But it could also be dangerous. They won't stop until they make sure this never sees the light of day." "I know," Helena replied, her voice filled with urgency. "That's why I need your help. We need to get this to someone outside the city, someone who can make sure this story gets told, even if something happens to me." Mariana closed the diary, her expression determined. "We have to move quickly. I know someone at a major investigative magazine who can help us. But we need to leave now. If the Alencars find out we're together, we'll be easy targets." They started packing their things quickly, but before they could leave, the sound of tires screeching on asphalt approached, followed by the slam of car doors. Helena and Mariana exchanged a terrified look. "They found us," Mariana whispered. "We have no choice," Helena said with sudden resolve. "We need to face this head-on. If we run now, they'll hunt us down to the end." Mariana nodded, but her eyes showed the fear of someone who knew they were about to face a much more powerful enemy. With the diary clutched tightly in her hands, they headed to the door. Helena took a deep breath, knowing that this moment might be the last one where she had any choice. But she also knew that the truth they carried was more important than their own lives. When they opened the door, the men were already there, their faces hard and expressionless. Among them, the cold and controlled figure of Dona Odette Alencar stood out like a looming shadow. "So, is this where your little adventure ends, Miss Campos?" she said, her voice like ice. "Or perhaps, it's just the beginning of something you don't yet fully understand." Helena pressed the diary against her chest. "The truth will always find a way, Dona Odette. And even if it destroys us, it will take you down with it." Dona Odette just smiled, a cruel, emotionless smile. "We'll see, my dear. We'll see." And at that moment, the fate of Helena and Mariana became uncertain, but the power of the words they carried promised to change everything if they could survive the night. The confrontation was inevitable. Helena and Mariana were cornered, but the strength of the truth they held in their hands made them resist the fear that threatened to overwhelm them. Dona Odette Alencar, with her icy gaze, seemed ready to deliver the final blow, but something in Helena's resolute stance made her hesitate for a brief moment. That small fraction of a second was enough for Mariana to realize there was still a chance, one last card to play. You know that if something happens to us, the story doesn't die here, right? Mariana said, her voice filled with determination. We've already taken precautions. Others have copies of this diary. If you harm us, this story will spread like wildfire. Dona Odette raised an eyebrow, intrigued but unconvinced. Do you really think your threats will stop me? Don't you realize I'm willing to do whatever it takes to protect my family? Helena took a step forward, moving closer to Dona Odette. But you can't control everything, Dona Odette. Not anymore. The world has changed, and even the most powerful families aren't above the truth. If you insist on trying to silence us, you'll end up destroying what's left of the Alencar legacy. The matriarch observed Helena for a long moment, evaluating every word, every gesture. She had always prided herself on her ability to manipulate people and situations to her advantage, but now, for the first time in years, she felt the situation slipping from her grasp. The story of Beatrice, buried for so long, was about to resurface with a force that not even she could contain. The men around them waited for orders, but Dona Odette seemed lost in her own thoughts. The silence was oppressive, and Helena could feel the tension in the air, every second stretching into an eternity. Finally, Dona Odette spoke, her voice low but firm. We'll handle this another way. Get in the car, she said, gesturing to the black vehicle parked just behind the men. Mariana and Helena exchanged a quick glance, searching for answers in each other. This could be a trap, but refusing to go could mean the end right there. With no better option, they both nodded, walking slowly toward the car, followed by Dona Odette's men. Inside the car, the atmosphere was heavy. Dona Odette kept her eyes fixed on the road as the vehicle moved through the dark streets of the city. The destination was unknown, but what awaited them was clear, a decision that could change the course of everything. After what felt like an eternity, the car stopped in front of a large property on the outskirts of the city. It wasn't the Alencar's main mansion, but a smaller house, surrounded by tall trees and an oppressive silence. Dona Odette got out of the car and, without saying a word, gestured for the two to follow her. They entered the house, whose walls bore the same aura of mystery and power that permeated the Alencar family itself. Once inside, Dona Odette led them to a small office. The room was austere, with antique furniture and a large, unlit fireplace. On the dark oak desk, a single leather folder lay open, with documents scattered across its surface. Dona Odette sat behind the desk, gesturing for Helena and Mariana to do the same. Once they were seated, she finally broke the silence. I know neither of you will stop until the truth about Beatrice is revealed. But there's more at stake here than you realize. This diary, she pointed to Helena's bag, where the diary was kept, is just one part of a much larger story, a story that began long before Beatrice, and if told wrong, could destroy more than you intend. Mariana frowned, not understanding where Dona Odette was going. What are you saying? That there are more buried secrets? More than you can imagine, replied Dona Odette. But I am willing to offer a deal. You give me the diary, and in return, I will give you something worth much more, the complete story, the true story of the Alencars, uncut, no lies. Helena felt a wave of disbelief. And how can we trust that you would give us this truth? After everything you did to hide what happened to Beatrice. Donna Odette let out a heavy sigh, as if she were carrying the weight of the world on her shoulders. Because I know that the time for secrets is over. The truth will come out, one way or another. But if you publish the wrong story, without understanding everything behind it, not only my family will suffer. There will be consequences that will extend far beyond the Alencars, affecting people you can't even imagine. Mariana and Helena looked at each other, feeling the weight of that decision. Accepting the deal would mean delving even deeper into the labyrinth of lies and secrets surrounding the Alencar family. But refusing it, well, there was no guarantee they would leave that house alive. Helena took a deep breath and, with a firm voice, responded, "Tell us everything. And if it's the truth, the whole truth, then maybe we can make a deal." Donna Odette nodded slowly, as if she had expected this answer. She stood up and, with a look that mixed resignation and determination, began to tell the story that no one had ever heard. A story of power, betrayal, and regret, one that could forever change the course of the city's history. Donna Odette rose from the chair and walked over to the unlit fireplace, her steps echoing softly on the wooden floor. Her silhouette seemed heavier, as if she were carrying decades of secrets and guilt that were finally coming to light. When she began to speak, her voice had a different tone, not the calculated coldness from before, but a sincerity that Helena and Mariana did not expect. "The story of my family," she began, "is marked by a legacy of power, yes, but also by a shadow that has followed us for generations. Beatrice's disappearance was just the latest chapter in a dark tale that started long before I was born." Donna Odette recounted the origins of the Alencars, a family that rose to power through dangerous alliances and morally questionable decisions. In the decades that followed, the Alencars consolidated their influence, but it came at a cost. The city, prosperous on the outside, was contaminated by a web of corruption and covered up crimes involving not only the Alencars but also other influential families and powerful figures. Beatrice, according to Donna Odette, had discovered something terrible, a secret that threatened not only the Alencars but the entire power structure that sustained the city. She couldn't just disappear without a trace, so she was confined against her will in a private sanatorium, where her voice would be silenced forever. However, Beatrice managed to hide the diary, hoping that someone, someday, would find it and reveal the truth. But I was wrong, Donna Odette admitted, her eyes downcast. I thought I was protecting my family when I was actually perpetuating a lie that destroyed the life of an innocent young woman. Beatrice wasn't just a victim. She was brave enough to try to expose something that even I, with all my power, couldn't face. Mariana interrupted, incredulous, "And you expect us to trust you after all this? To just take your word as truth?" Donna Odette looked directly at Mariana, her gaze now filled with genuine sadness. "I don't expect you to trust me, but I hope you understand that what's at stake here goes beyond the three of us. You want to expose the truth, and I need that truth to be told correctly, without letting it destroy innocent people in the process." Helena was silent, processing the revelations. She could feel the weight of the story Donna Odette was telling, but she knew that words alone were not enough. "We need proof, more than just the diary," Helena said. "We need documents, concrete evidence that supports this story. And we need to ensure that none of this will be used to protect the guilty or cover up other crimes." Donna Odette nodded slowly. "You will have what you need. I will hand over all the documents I have, including the records from the sanatorium where Beatrice was kept. But in return, you must promise that when this story is published, it will be done fairly and carefully. No omissions, no distortions. Mariana and Helena exchanged a look, both knowing they were about to make a deal with a woman who had been their enemy just moments ago. But they also knew that if they truly wanted to expose the truth about the Alencars and Beatrice, they would have to follow this path. "We have a deal," Mariana said, extending her hand. Dona Odette shook it, a simple gesture but one loaded with meaning. "I hope that in the end, we can find some form of redemption for everyone involved." In the days that followed, Helena and Mariana worked tirelessly to compile the evidence, examine every document, and ensure that the story would be told correctly. With Mariana's support, the story was published in a widely circulated magazine, causing a real earthquake in the city. The repercussions were immediate. The Alencars were investigated, and many of their dark secrets finally came to light. Dona Odette, true to her word, did not try to stop the process. She knew that what was being destroyed was not just her family's reputation, but a cycle of lies that needed to be broken. Beatrice, whose voice had been silenced for so long, finally found justice. Her story became a symbol of resistance against corrupt power and courage for those who seek the truth, no matter the cost. Helena and Mariana, though knowing that the path they took was dangerous, felt at peace seeing the city begin to rebuild itself, this time on a more solid foundation, where the echoes of the past would no longer haunt future generations. And so, the story of the Alencars, marked by secrets and betrayals, found its conclusion. But for Helena and Mariana, this was just one of many stories that needed to be told in a world where the truth, no matter how painful, must always prevail.